Let's go to the Wayback Machine here for everybody listening. When NORTHCOM was created, the general in charge signed a charter with somebody else. In fact, you'll find this picture where you see this schmuck who's General Schmidlap in charge of, NORTHCOM, is shaking hands with a Canadian general. Okay? Now, that Canadian general is making a contract with that American general. Let me ask you something, Frank. Who in the hell gave that general the authority to sign any contract with any foreign party, partnership, or member? Who the hell gave him any authority at all?
Yeah, nobody I know of.
What authority under the Constitution of the United States does some sorry-ass, starred officer have to sign any contract with a foreign military power to bring that military power into the United States? Who the hell is that turkey? You see
hanging from someplace.
You see the problem with this? See, He has no business signing. The only thing that a commanding officer signs for all the way up through, this demonstrates an act of treason on the part of NORTHCOM. But what is NORTHCOM? What are the fusion centers? If we understand the part that nobody's supposed to talk about, which has to do with these bonds, understand what you have are foreign officers and foreign globalist assets that are being brought into the United States under corporation. That's why the NORTHCOM officer in charge is signing as a privateer. NORTHCOM is not American. NORTHCOM is not for the American people. NORTHCOM is one of the foreclosure officers for the globalists under the United Nations against the United States. NORTHCOM is planning on betraying us all. And NORTHCOM is cooperating with foreign forces, bringing them on American soil under arms to be used against Americans. Triply, they are involved in treason. Not maybe, not kind of, not sort of. I'll go right back to that first action. It's not a fraud. It is a criminal fraud. That officer has no right, has no authority to make any contract with any foreign party or any foreign power or any person for that matter. In fact, if you tried to consider this, let's just reverse this. Frank, if you're right now in the U.S. military and you want to wear your uniform to a Ron Paul rally, what happens to you?
You get court-martialed or
Article 15, a reprimand. Why? Because you can't contract in uniform. You can't be involved politically in uniform. You can't show your patriotism in uniform.
Yeah.
So if that lowly private or sergeant or major or lieutenant colonel can't do that, who is this schmuck with the stars on his shoulder, or what business deal is he making? How can he contract with anyone? Especially a Canadian officer, and he's got that bird-eating, real ring-knocker smile on his face while they're busy swapping, squeezing each other under the table where you can't see it in each other's private parts. That's why they got those convenient smiles on their face between those two schmucks. And by the way, don't worry. Here's the other question nobody's asking. NORTHCOM has the can heads involved. Did anybody check to see how many can heads are participating in this exercise? Because if the Russians are coming from halfway around the planet, NORTHCOM is integrated completely with Canadian military command, which means that it's going to be at least U.S. can head, probably with Mexican, and the Russians are there. Oh, see, Mark's being really mean about this. See, I'm bringing stuff. This is all stuff we've talked about on the air, but this is not maybe. If you look at all the information that's been available for the last how many years on this, and if you watch the inception reports on NORTHCOM, who's after NORTHCOM, after the corporation of NORTHCOM was created, which is an aggressor force on the ground designed to be used against the American people. After NORTHCOM, the corporation, and the traders involved with it all got together, The very first people they went to was a foreign military force, the Canadian Army, and they brought them into the United States and brought them on our soil immediately. They didn't look for the American people. They're not looking for everybody to love the U.S. people. They are here to wage war against the American people. They can't use most of what they've got for that until they stupefy everybody with some BS story they're going to generate. So the first thing they turned to were foreign military forces. The first thing that NORTHCOM, to wage war on the American people, did was embrace a foreign military force, and it's right there in the picture, because who's he shaking hands with? He's shaking hands with a Canadian general. Wow. So that means that right off the bat, when you hear NORTHCOM, don't think American troops. Don't think American. They're not American. NORTHCOM is a private corporation, just like the TSA is operating as a private corporation on American airports, which are international zones, which is why the TSA is where it is and why they look like the East German secret police. They look more like the stinking East German secret police than anybody I've ever seen. And now you tie that in with bringing the Russians in. The Russians are they're just simply telling the Russians, hey, when the business deal goes down to carve up America, like the Michigan State Police, those prostitutes have already been told that they'll get to screw everybody. It's like the Illinois Highway Patrol were told they can screw everybody. They already do. Come on, they're right next to communist California for their gun laws. They already got IDs and tracking to go after everybody's gun, to confiscate, beat down the doors, and murder Americans. And they got the Polish there to help do it. Oh, but they're not the only ones. But they brought the Polish in so they could help out. So when the foreclosure takes place, everybody gets their chunk of the pie, dude. They already have a Polish enclave in Chicago, which is why they wanted to use the Poles, because the Poles will go, well, you're just mercenary today, it's no problem. You see? And here's an example. Here's another one, Frank. We already bought these foreigners as whores before. Remember when we invaded Iraq? We didn't have any alliance. We went out and bought mercenaries. We bought mercenary legions. Who were our chemical specialists for mercenaries for our big operation to go steal everything from Iraq? The Czech military. The chemical specialists we used, which, by the way, we told everybody for years that's what they were because we already knew from the intel end. And lo and behold, we went out of our way to buy those prostitutes, put them in the field, and use them on somebody else. So why are we not thinking they wouldn't do the same thing in reverse? Well, Czechoslovakia's not at war with anybody. They weren't at war with Iraq. Yeah, but they could be bought to go to war with Iraq. For the right price, Russian airborne can be used as prostitutes to be used on the American people. See, nobody's putting this proper perspective. You call them an army, they're not. Right now, these characters are the horrors that are out there that will be bought and paid for by the bankers. Kill the bankers and be done with it. Not any kind of nicely, save the country, hang a banker, and everybody said, save the country, hang a banker.
Amen.
Because that's what this is about. I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead, please. I know you got more.
No, that's it. I just one other thing. It just seems odd to me that the Russians are concerned about foreign involvement, in their country and in their sphere of influence, so to speak. And,
right.
They would have more interest in our cause, and my fantasy is sometimes that we could find certain elements among them that would help funnel certain resources our way.
Let me remind you of something here. You're on the right track with how it should be, but remember that you've had 80 years worth of Jewish manipulated communism in Russia. One of the reasons that they exacted revenge against the Tsar, why the Jewish mafia did that. Back during the Civil War, what most everybody forgets is the Tsar established a second blockade around America.
Yeah.
His blockade stopped the British and the French from getting involved. It wasn't the French and the British looking at, sideways at what way the Confederacy would go. That wasn't the issue at all. The Tsar's high seas fleet of the Atlantic performed picket duty and ensured that it stayed in pretty much an American conflict. Otherwise, either the British or the French, and probably both, would have figured out how to get back on the North American continent, which is what nobody wants to talk about. There were so many worm noodles to what happened with the Civil War with stuff that didn't work. But because of that, it cost the Tsar, the long run is it cost the Romanov family their lives. And again, it was a vendetta thing. The whole thing about the communism and the international bankers who also got hit in New York, remember, who financed the Russian Revolution? $21 to $22 million in gold, not in paper, in gold, was shipped across the Atlantic with Trotsky. Trotsky was imprisoned in Canada. They let him out of prison. He was already locked up. He was secured. They already had him secured. Well, they turned right around, turned a blind eye. The Jewish mafia in New York got him bought out, turned around and put him on a ship, basically, along with the gold in one form or another. So basically, they shipped their whole hind end back over to Europe, got all the rest of the communists out of Austria, that's just where the rest were, like Lenin, etc., if you know how they were hiding back and forth. They rounded them up, put them on the black train. They passed through 4 battle lines. They passed through the western Allied side, the German side, the German eastern side, and the Russian side, got into Russia, and the rest is history. And again, who financed that? Well, 2 groups. Number one, international communism in Europe, / the Jewish bankers, and the Soviets on Wall Street, the people who had planned, which goes back not that far before. That was only 40 years since the Civil War, and their first failed attempt to cut the country up. Because, remember, they were all promised that there'd be money coming from Europe to help once they screwed the Confederacy. The way they got the idiots in the North to do what they did, to get everybody fighting, is they said, when you're all done, you'll be able to, basically carpetbag all of the South. But the North was in such debt at the end of the Civil War that what everybody forgets is like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. Go west, young man. Well, the reason we all had to go west is because the bankers were foreclosing on all the farms here and drove Americans off their land. And if you didn't want to, unless you wanted to starve in the streets, you better go find a place to live. And so people headed west. All the farms are established here. There's 2 major shifts in the power structure of Michigan with regard to the property owners. And in each case, it was the shyster bankers screwing the landowners. And we just saw the same thing here across the whole country, except there's no west to go to, guys. Think about it. Anyway, I'm sorry, Frank. Anything else, please? Jump in there.
No, that's it. I'll sit back and listen. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing up the subject. Again, I touched it in a cursory fashion. Here's how it works. Watch American Peril. The first one, American Peril, spells it out for you. It's real easy to understand. Everybody else duplicated a lot of stuff there. Not a problem. We told everybody to do that, but they also duplicated it, and now it's being rehashed from other directions. The thing about this is I'll tie something else in that there's another story that another piece that doesn't have to do with the foreign troops, but it is critical in that if you understand, and forgive me, I'm going to see if I can find it for you so I can clarify it. This has to do with the whole idea of FinCEN. And you might recall that I touched on FinCEN years ago, and even people in the Patriot movement were flapping their gums. Oh, that's just crazy. Now, guys, we couldn't open our mouths unless we actually had the information, you see. And we had people who were on the ground in Chicago when the first multi-agency meeting of FinCEN took place, and it was in Chicago. Originally, we had information up to a total, not up to, but 52 different entities participated in this first FinCEN conference to get the ball rolling. Now, FinCEN, and this included the recruitment of, this is where they came at it from another angle to try and recruit foreign troops to try and again, they were going to finance, it was one of the many ways to finance foreign operations inside the United States. And again, most of it would have been through a foreclosure scam or a thieving scam. All of this is always where they, and you aren't supposed to think about it this way, piracy operations by privateers/pirates who are given letters of marque from foreign powers, the bankers operating overseas against the American people. Now, what's interesting is that a family on the East Coast just had a FinCEN operation levied against them, and I think there's a listing of it in the blacklisted news, and I'm going to see here if I can find it. There's the Obama regime banned children from doing work on family farms, which I wanted to mention again. Let's see if I can find it. Forgive me, guys. I'm looking for this real quick. I wrote this down, and I don't know of how many places it's posted, but I thought Blacklisted News might have it by now. Anyway, the point is that they stole $70,000 from this family who have a healthy food farm. That's the problem. They've got natural foods. And what the Fed did is they because they were structuring. Now, I explained this to everybody 20 years ago, or 19 years ago, and I'm going to do this again. You see, the idea is just like the arbitrary pig attack in Michigan here, where the definition is so nebulous that from one person to the next, they can say it is going to affect you and then it's not going to affect you, and that's intentional. That way, when the communists come in, when the communists in the blue state police uniform, or the communists in the DNR, or the communists in the Fed come in and attack you, then it's, oh, we misinterpreted it, or we were all confused, or, well, the boss said it was this, but the rank and file said it was that, and so, oh, well, we just got to arrest everybody anyway, and we'll just figure out later after we get you to spend $500,000 defending your life whether or not we were right. You see? Now, all these characters, all these spit-swapping ring knockers in the black uniforms, blue uniforms, or whatever uniform they're in, and all the piss willies that are in their little black robes, they all know this. It's all a lie. They want to keep perpetrating this pickle-smoking mirror lie under the assumption somehow we're going to keep eating this piece of feces pie, or at least we take a chunk of it. No, I'm not going to buy any of that. They know. They all know. They all understand it's illegitimate, and they're proceeding anyway.
It's like them trying to claim that pigs on a farm, even if they're free range on a certain amount of acreage, are feral pigs. I'm sorry, if they were feral pigs, the farmer wouldn't have been able to go out and shoot them and their piglets, know exactly where they are so they could kill them.
Or feed them, or you can even feed them. If you know what a wild hog is like, guys, don't worry. Sometimes the stuff you'd offer them ain't as tasty as you are.
And I keep stressing this. The DNR put out that BS article, expressing how, oh no, these are just feral pigs. We've got a real bad feral pig problem, which we do in Michigan.
So we kill them and eat them.
They're using the feral pigs as an excuse to attack the farmers.
Right, and that was all propaganda to a degree that they've generated accordingly. The thing about this is they took $70,000 from these people that have their farm. They do they do under $10,000 of business when they deposit per month. That was the thing that, well, they structured so that they wouldn't have to fill out the government paperwork. Yeah, well, duh. In other words, I'm not going to do business so that I have to deal with these fools. I don't want to have to waste an hour of my life's time because some other bureaucrat wants to suck my life dry. So instead, they basically were putting $9,000 here, $8,000 there, or whatever. So that was their excuse, not because they were doing anything illegal, but because they interpreted that they could go after their money. Now, I'm going to tell you the reason they did that. Because if there's $70,000 there, the whores that did it, the parasites, the government parasites, get 10% of what they steal. That's part of this whole thing with these alien/foreign entities, these alphabet soup agency prostitutes, is that they steal you blind. The only thing that gravitates to them are criminal minds and thieves. That is all that you have there now. They can wear a suit. They can claim they've gone to college. I don't care. It makes no difference. They are thieving swine. That's all you've got. That's all that's left. What gets me is, what they did. Now through this FinCEN operation, they're levying a lawsuit for $63,000 of the $70,000 they stole from these people. They're going to try, and they claim that they have the excuse that now these people have filed taxes on this stuff. They file all the other BS paperwork. Excuse me. But the problem, and I'm saying excuse me because I almost said something else I shouldn't say, and I'm going to watch myself. But this BS nonsense that they generated was so they could steal $63,000. The agents involved are going to pocket about $10,000 in cash that they don't have to claim, and they get their table scraping because they're thieves. And of course, their logic is that either way you're going to spend thousands of dollars to get thousands of dollars back, plus your life's time. I think they need to be arrested. In fact, they're having to file. They had to file. They're filing a litigation to steal the money. You see how this works? In other words, how do they have an extra interest in this? Well, here's the problem. The stinking, bottom-feeding Admiralty Court that the Founding Fathers called the hated Admiralty Courts. They have no justification. They have no legitimate claim to that money. That money is going through the banking system, but now these desperate prostitutes and these alphabet soup agencies, these whores, these bottom feeders, these scum, these parasites, the filth that has gravitated, that are all internationalists, by the way, the internationalist filth that you see operating on this smaller scale is an example of what they want to do to the whole of the country when they're done. They want you indentured the same as the British people are now, as stinking slaves, as bonded men of the realm, because they want us to be. Of course, we have to bow down to the royalty, don't you know? The inbred shysters that barely can put their fingers together and have to have, well, every once in a while they have to grab a woman from outside and breed with her so they can, well, at least claim that their family line isn't a straight toothpick. Because after all, royalty can only breed with royalty, but if there's only 100 or less families left, how long before you have basically the Imperial Road crew from Deliverance banjo crew? You know what I mean? Well, he can play the banjo good. No, he doesn't even play the banjo well, sir. In fact, he'd tell you that he's above that. But don't worry, the other guy that's there, he can play the banjo because he's an instrumentalist. What can I say? Anyway, that's what this whole thing is tied in. This is not isolated, but what it is corporation foreclosing. We're not supposed to look at it that way. The fusion centers. Let me put it this way. Jesse Ventura already did a series of articles. We're almost at the top of the hour here, so we're going to be closing in a minute for this hour. Jesse Ventura did a piece, but the most significant component of it, talking about the fusion centers, is where that one rat said, well, we're all independent operations. Whoa, back up. And with no oversight. Well, how could that be? Well, it's because the fusion centers are a fiction created outside the United States, just like the FBI is a fiction from outside the United States that does not legitimately exist. Not under the Constitution, but under admiralty law as an enemy of the American people, as an aggressor against the American people, is how they've been brought into the United States. The fusion centers are just a collection point. In fact, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. Didn't the pirates have to have a safety place where all of their little horrors could come, all their little monsters and murderers could come together, that were all the ring knocker inner circle with the black flag? That's what the fusion centers are. And Ventura, the guy, rattled it out and then realized, you look at his eyes, you realized he made a mistake. Those are one of the foreclosure groups that are being used against the American people to wage war against us, to indenture us. They're slavers. We got to go to break.